Oops, looks like you need a refill, Marin.
Apologize to her right now.
They threw Coca-Cola on a waitress for fun, unaware her husband was a mafia boss. Brown liquid soaked through crisp white fabric. 30 guests erupted into laughter. Trevor Hastings lowered his glass, satisfied, watching soda drip down a waitress's arm, like he'd just delivered the evening's finest entertainment. Nobody in that private dining room knew her real name. Nobody knew she'd spent 6 months hiding an identity dangerous enough to get her killed if the wrong person ever recognized it. She walked calmly toward the parking lot, humiliation burning against soaked fabric. Then she made a single phone call. 40 minutes later, 6 black SUVs pulled into the club's circular driveway, and every single person who laughed that night was about to understand exactly who they'd humiliated. Subscribe right now and drop your city in the comments, because what happens in the next 4 minutes is going to leave you speechless. Like, share, notifications on. You are not ready for this story. The Ash Grove Country Club's private dining room carried the specific golden opulence reserved exclusively for members whose net worth guaranteed considerable deference from every single staff member circulating through the room. 240-pound night shift waitress with aching ankles and greasy apron strings doesn't expect a billionaire mob boss. Marin Cole moved through that dining room with a tray balanced against her palm, her crisp white uniform pressed with the specific professional precision of a woman who'd worked catering events for 2 years, long enough to recognize the exact moment wealthy men decided a service worker existed purely for their amusement. She was 30 years old, sharp-eyed despite considerable exhaustion, carrying herself through this exact evening with the specific quiet discipline she'd mastered across 6 devastating months of undercover work nobody in that dining room could possibly imagine. Trevor lifted his glass of Coca-Cola with deliberate, calculated intent, his eyes tracking Marin's approach with genuine, entitled anticipation. She's slow tonight. His voice carried casual, practiced cruelty designed specifically for his friend's amusement. Maybe she needs some encouragement. He tipped his glass. Brown liquid poured across her shoulder in a deliberate, unhurried stream, soaking instantly through the crisp fabric of her uniform, running down her arm in dark, sticky rivulets. The entire table erupted into cruel, delighted laughter. Marin froze completely, her professional composure cracking for exactly 1 devastating second before she forced it back into careful, controlled place. 30 witnesses watched with genuine amusement, several phones lifting to capture footage of her humiliation, rather than a single person moving to help. Nobody in that room recognized her. Nobody understood that the woman standing soaked and humiliated in front of them wasn't simply a struggling caterer working double shifts to survive. She was Marin Castellano, wife to Dominic Castellano, the single most feared organized crime figure on the entire eastern seaboard. 6 months earlier, everything had been different. Marin had married Dominic 3 years prior, genuinely understanding and accepting the dangerous world she was marrying into, never once anticipating that 6 months ago she'd overhear a fragment of conversation inside her own home that would force her into the specific, calculated decision to disappear temporarily into an identity nobody would connect to Dominic Castellano's wife. She'd been passing Dominic's private study late one evening, the door left slightly ajar, when Marcus Delgado's voice had drifted through the gap, carrying careful, urgent tones, considerably different from his usual composed confidence. She'd caught fragments only, a name she didn't recognize, numbers connected to accounts that made absolutely no sense against legitimate business dealings, the specific, chilling clarity of a man discussing something considerably more dangerous than routine operations. 240-pound night shift waitress with aching ankles and greasy apron strings doesn't expect a billionaire mob boss. Confronting the betrayal without comprehensive proof risked losing the exact evidence needed while alerting whoever was responsible to disappear their tracks entirely. She understood, with the same clear-eyed practicality that had defined her entire adult life, that catching Marcus required patience, considerably more calculated than immediate confrontation. She'd approached Dominic carefully days later, framing her request for space around genuine emotional processing, a partial truth that let her disappear into an identity nobody would connect to his household's usual security protocols. I need time, space to process everything happening around us right now. Her voice had carried genuine emotional weight during that conversation, though the full truth remained carefully hidden beneath her careful explanation. Dominic had accepted her request with genuine, if reluctant, understanding, believing his wife needed distance to process a difficult period in their marriage, never once suspecting the specific dangerous investigation she'd already begun planning. Maren had taken the position at Ashgrove Country Club exactly 1 week later, understanding intimately that catering events connected to the city's wealthiest families provided exactly the kind of access her investigation required. 6 months of careful, methodical work followed. She'd documented financial irregularities glimpsed during private conversations at exclusive events, cross-referenced names overheard in passing against public records she researched during her limited free time, slowly assembling comprehensive evidence connecting Marcus Delgado directly to a rival organization that had been quietly working to destabilize Dominic's empire from inside his own trusted circle. 6 months of casual cruelty from wealthy clients had become routine throughout that dangerous investigative work. Spilled drinks and dismissive comments, and the specific exhausting reality of being treated as invisible help by people who never once considered she might be anything beyond the uniform she wore. Tonight's humiliation carried none of the genuine danger her investigation actually represented. Maren excused herself with careful, controlled composure, her voice carrying steady professionalism, despite the soda still dripping down her arm. "I'll clean up immediately. My apologies for any inconvenience." She walked calmly toward the service entrance, her measured pace carrying none of the trembling devastation building beneath her professional exterior until she'd cleared the dining room entirely, moving through quiet hallways toward the parking lot beyond. Her hands began trembling the moment cool evening air hit her soaked uniform. She pulled a phone from her apron pocket, a device Dominic had absolutely no knowledge she still maintained under her maiden name, her fingers finding a specific contact she hadn't called in 6 devastating months. The line connected after 2 rings. Her voice carried steady, absolute conviction despite everything she'd endured throughout the previous exhausting hours. "It's me." Silence stretched on the other end, genuine shock evident even through the phone's connection. "I have everything we need." Her voice carried devastating certainty. "And I need you here tonight." Dominic's voice finally broke through his genuine, stunned silence, carrying none of the emotional distance 6 months of careful separation had led Maren to expect. "Maren, where are you? What's happening?" His controlled composure shifted instantly into focused, urgent attention, the specific quality in his wife's voice cutting straight through 6 months of careful, patient waiting. "Ashgrove Country Club. I need you here, and I need Marcus Delgado's financial records pulled immediately. Everything connected to the Reyes account transfers from March." Dominic's breath caught audibly through the connection, genuine shock replacing his earlier confusion entirely. "How do you know about those transfers?" Maren's voice carried steady, unwavering conviction despite her soaked uniform and the humiliation still burning beneath her skin. "Because I've spent 6 months finding out exactly what Marcus has been doing to you. I have documentation, communication records, everything we need to expose him completely." Dominic's controlled authority sharpened with devastating speed, his voice carrying immediate, absolute command as he processed the full scope of what his wife was revealing. "I'm coming. Don't move from wherever you're standing right now." His rapid, methodical mobilization began within seconds of ending the call. Security personnel receiving urgent instructions as 6 black SUVs assembled with coordinated precision outside his estate's gates. Throughout the 40-minute drive toward Ashgrove Country Club, Dominic's mind raced through devastating realization after devastating realization, understanding with growing, horrified clarity exactly what his wife's 6-month absence had actually represented. She hadn't disappeared to process difficult emotions following their conversation about a security breach inside his organization. She'd been conducting a dangerous, independent investigation, entirely alone, without his protection, without his full knowledge of exactly what she was risking every single day she'd spent working undercover in a world that could have exposed and eliminated her the moment anyone recognized her true identity. His controlled fury, built with each passing mile, directed not at Marin, but at himself, at his own failure to recognize exactly how much his wife had been carrying alone throughout 6 months he'd assumed were simply about emotional healing. Marin remained in the parking lot throughout that 40-minute wait, her soaked uniform finally drawing concerned attention from club security personnel who offered assistance she politely declined. "I'm waiting for someone." Her voice carried calm, composed certainty, despite everything she'd endured that evening. "They'll be here shortly." Her attention remained fixed on the club's circular driveway, her mind racing through exactly how the following conversation with Dominic would unfold once 6 months of careful secrecy finally, completely collapsed. The 6 SUVs arrived with devastating, coordinated precision exactly 40 minutes after her call, headlights cutting through the evening darkness as they swept into the club's circular driveway with controlled, absolute urgency. Dominic emerged from the lead vehicle before it had fully stopped, his controlled fury radiating from every line of his expression, his eyes finding Marin immediately across the parking lot's dim lighting. His stride carried absolute, unhurried authority as he crossed toward her, security personnel flanking his approach with practiced, silent efficiency. "Marin." His voice broke slightly the moment he reached her, his hands finding her face gently despite his obvious, barely contained fury at everything unfolding around them. His eyes tracked the soda stains still visible across her shoulder, genuine devastating recognition crossing his features as he processed exactly what had happened to her that evening. "What did they do to you?" Marin's composure carried steady, controlled conviction despite the emotion building beneath her exhausted exterior. "That's not what matters right now. What matters is everything I've discovered over the past 6 months." Dominic's expression carried genuine, complicated devastation as her words settled fully. 6 months. You've been investigating this entire time, completely alone." His voice carried quiet, devastating concern. "Marin, do you have any idea what could have happened if anyone had recognized you? If Marcus or his allies had discovered exactly who you actually were? I know exactly what the risk was." Her voice carried genuine, unwavering conviction. "That's precisely why I couldn't tell you until I had comprehensive proof. Confronting Marcus without complete evidence would have simply alerted him to disappear his tracks entirely." Dominic studied her carefully, genuine respect building beneath his obvious protective fury. "Tell me everything." Marin's explanation began unfolding with careful, methodical precision. 6 months of dangerous work, compressed into devastating detail, as she described the overheard conversation, her calculated decision to disappear undercover, the specific catering events she deliberately sought out because they connected to people and locations relevant to her suspicions. "I overheard Marcus discussing account transfers with someone I didn't recognize, numbers that made no sense against legitimate business. I knew immediately something was wrong." Dominic's controlled fury built with devastating, silent intensity as she continued. "I took this position specifically because catering events at exclusive venues gave me access to conversations and documentation I never would have obtained as your protected wife. Wealthy clients discuss business freely in front of catering staff. Nobody suspects the woman refilling their wine glasses might actually be listening. Her voice carried genuine, hard-won conviction. I've spent 6 months documenting everything. Financial records, overheard conversations, communication patterns connecting Marcus directly to a rival organization. Before she could continue further, the club's entrance doors swung open behind them, Trevor Hastings emerging with his friends, still laughing about the evening's earlier entertainment, their voices carrying carefree amusement that died instantly the moment they registered exactly what was unfolding in the parking lot. 240-pound night shift waitress with aching ankles and greasy apron strings doesn't expect a billionaire mob boss. His face drained of color entirely, genuine horror crashing over his features as devastating recognition crystallized with terrible, absolute clarity. That's Dominic Castellano. His voice carried barely audible, terrified disbelief. And she's his wife. Trevor's genuine, escalating horror crashed over him completely, his earlier cruel confidence collapsing into desperate, terrified silence as he processed exactly what consequence might await someone who'd publicly humiliated Dominic Castellano's wife in front of 30 witnesses. His friends scattered instinctively backward, none of them daring to speak as Dominic's controlled attention shifted briefly toward Trevor, his expression carrying devastating, quiet authority that made the wealthy man's knees genuinely buckle. I poured soda on her. Trevor's voice carried desperate, stammering justification. It was just a joke. I didn't know who she was. Dominic's controlled fury carried absolute, devastating finality. That's precisely the problem. You decided she deserved humiliation simply because you assumed nobody watching would ever hold you accountable. His voice dropped lower, considerably more dangerous. We'll discuss appropriate consequence for tonight's cruelty separately. Right now, I have considerably more important matters demanding my attention. He turned his full focus back toward Maren, understanding that whatever punishment Trevor's viciousness deserved mattered considerably less than the comprehensive investigation his wife had apparently completed entirely alone. Continue. Tell me everything you've discovered. Maren's careful, methodical explanation continued unfolding with devastating precision. 6 months of dangerous work assembling into comprehensive, damning detail. I identified 3 separate events over the past 4 months where Marcus met privately with representatives from the Vasquez organization. Each meeting occurred immediately before significant operational security breaches within your own network. Dominic's controlled fury built with silent, devastating intensity as she continued. I photographed documents left unattended during one catering event, financial records showing considerable payments funneled through offshore accounts. The timing corresponds precisely with 3 major shipments that were subsequently intercepted by Vasquez operatives. Her voice carried genuine, hard-won conviction. Marcus has been selling our operational secrets for at least 6 months, possibly longer. Dominic's devastating recognition crystallized with terrible clarity. Understanding that his own most trusted advisor for over a decade had been systematically betraying him, feeding operational secrets to a rival family. His motivation. What could possibly justify betraying our family after everything we've built together? Maren's expression carried genuine, complicated sympathy despite everything at stake. Gambling debts. Considerable debts he'd successfully hidden from everyone in the organization. The Vasquez family offered to erase everything he owed in exchange for information. Detective Elena Reyes arrived at the parking lot 20 minutes later, having received an urgent call from Dominic's security team requesting her immediate presence, her federal credentials providing crucial institutional authority to the unfolding confrontation. I've been building a financial crimes case connected to irregular banking activity linked to organized crime networks for the past several months. Her voice carried genuine, professional gravity as she reviewed the documentation Maren had assembled. This provides exactly the corroboration my institutional case has been lacking. Their combined investigation accelerated with devastating momentum throughout the following hour. Dominic's own considerable resources combining with Elena's federal authority and Marin's 6 months of careful documentation to build comprehensive evidence connecting Marcus Delgado directly to the rival Castellano organization's chief competitor. Financial records, communication patterns, and documented meetings assembled into proof too extensive for any denial to survive. Dominic's phone buzzed suddenly with an urgent alert from his security team, monitoring communications throughout his organization, his controlled expression shifting instantly from focused investigation into sharp, devastating alarm. Marcus knows. His voice carried genuine, growing dread. Surveillance just intercepted communication, suggesting he's aware his betrayal has been discovered. Elena's professional composure sharpened immediately. How is that possible? We've maintained absolute discretion throughout this entire investigation. Dominic's expression carried devastating, growing horror. Trevor's friends. One of them apparently has business connections to Marcus's network. Word already spread the moment they witnessed us here tonight. Marin's blood ran cold, genuine alarm crossing her exhausted features. If Marcus understands he's been exposed, he's not simply going to accept consequence quietly. Dominic's security chief approached with urgent, controlled speed, his expression carrying genuine, devastating alarm. "Boss, we have a serious problem. We intercepted Marcus's communication with Vasquez operatives directly. He's proposing something considerably more dangerous than simple escape." Dominic's voice carried absolute controlled fury. What exactly is he proposing? The security chief's response carried devastating, urgent weight. To understanding his betrayal has been fully exposed, he's coordinating an immediate operation with the Vasquez organization to eliminate both you and your wife simultaneously, before your combined investigation can achieve full comprehensive prosecution. He's not simply trying to escape consequence anymore. His voice carried genuine, escalating dread. He's trying to eliminate the two people capable of destroying everything he's built with the Vasquez family before that destruction can actually happen. Dominic's response carried none of his usual controlled authority, replaced entirely by urgent, focused command. "Marcus, get every man positioned. Elena, help Kaylee get her daughter to the walk-in freezer. It's reinforced, and it's the safest location in this building." Kaylee was already moving, her maternal instincts overriding every other consideration as she rushed toward the back office where Ruby sat, coloring quietly, blissfully unaware of the approaching danger. "Baby, we need to play a special hiding game right now." Her voice carried careful, controlled calm, despite the terror racing through her chest. Ruby's confused expression carried genuine, innocent uncertainty. "Is this because of the superhero men?" "Something like that, sweetheart. Come on, quickly now." Kaylee guided her daughter toward the diner's industrial walk-in freezer, Elena following close behind with a flashlight and several blankets. The specific, efficient urgency of someone who understood exactly what preparation this crisis required. "Stay in here no matter what you hear. Can you do that for me?" Kaylee's voice carried genuine, desperate maternal love beneath her controlled composure. Ruby's small nod carried genuine trust despite her obvious confusion. "I love you, baby. I'll come get you very soon." Kaylee sealed the freezer door, her hands trembling slightly as she processed the devastating reality of leaving her daughter in a metal box while armed men prepared to defend her diner against an approaching assault. She returned to the main diner floor to find Dominic's organization transformed into focused, coordinated defense, every wounded man who could still function taking positions near windows and entrances with the specific disciplined precision of trained soldiers preparing for combat. Marcus's investigation had reached its devastating conclusion just minutes before the surveillance alert. The specific traitor's identity confirmed through cross-referenced communication logs and Kaylee's detailed description. "It's Anthony." Marcus's voice carried genuine, controlled fury as he relayed the finding to Dominic. The man Kaylee treated last night. He's been feeding information to Castellano's organization for months. Dominic's expression carried devastating recognition, understanding crashing over him with brutal clarity as he processed the specific betrayal of a man he'd personally trusted, someone who'd sat wounded in Kaylee's diner throughout the night, while his own treachery approached to finish what the ambush had started. Where is he now? He slipped out 20 minutes ago, claimed he needed air. Marcus's voice carried genuine, devastating implication. He's the one who told them exactly where we are. Kaylee's own knowledge of the diner's layout and the surrounding highway terrain, developed over years of running the business, proved instrumental as she quickly briefed Dominic's remaining men on defensive positions and escape routes they hadn't fully considered. The back service entrance leads directly to a drainage culvert that runs parallel to the highway. If you need to move people without being seen from the main road, that's your best option. Her voice carried genuine, focused competence despite her own fear. The kitchen's walk-in cooler has a secondary door that opens into the storage room, giving you a crossfire position if anyone breaches the main entrance. Dominic studied her with genuine, growing amazement at her composed, practical contribution to their defense, despite everything at stake. You've thought about this diner's defensibility before. Every business owner on this stretch of highway thinks about worst-case scenarios. Kaylee's voice carried grim, practical honesty. Robbery, natural disasters, situations exactly like this one, even if I never expected to actually need this knowledge. Castellano's vehicles arrived 12 minutes later, 6 SUVs pulling into the diner's parking lot with coordinated, aggressive precision, armed operatives emerging with the specific, confident aggression of people who believed they were about to eliminate a severely weakened, vulnerable target. They found considerably more resistance than they anticipated. Dominic's organization, now fully aware of Anthony's betrayal and specifically prepared because of Kaylee's crucial tactical knowledge, met the assault with devastating, coordinated force. The confrontation unfolded with brutal intensity across the diner's interior and parking lot, gunfire echoing through the storm's remaining rain, as both organizations committed fully to a confrontation that would determine which criminal power actually controlled this stretch of abandoned highway. Kaylee remained near the freezer throughout the confrontation, her own fierce protective instincts fully activated. She monitored the chaos unfolding beyond the kitchen, ready to defend her daughter with anything available if the assault somehow breached the diner's defenses. The battle lasted 11 devastating minutes. Castellano's assault force, expecting minimal resistance from an organization they believed catastrophically weakened by the earlier ambush, instead encountered Dominic's men fighting with the specific, desperate ferocity of people defending not just their own survival, but an innocent child's safety. The confrontation ended with Castellano's forces neutralized completely, several operatives captured for interrogation, the immediate threat to both Dominic's organization and Kaylee's family finally, permanently resolved. Anthony was found attempting to flee toward his vehicle, his betrayal fully exposed, his fate resolved with the specific brutal finality the criminal world demanded for 6 dead men and a nearly successful assassination attempt. Kaylee retrieved Ruby from the freezer once Dominic confirmed the threat had been completely neutralized, her daughter's relieved embrace carrying genuine, uncomplicated love, despite the chaos that had unfolded just beyond those metal walls. Is the scary part over? Ruby's small voice carried genuine, hopeful uncertainty. Yes, baby. It's completely over now. Kaylee's voice carried genuine, exhausted relief as she held her daughter close. Weeks passed following that devastating night, the Blue Cardinal Diner undergoing complete renovation through resources Dominic insisted on providing, not as payment for services rendered, but as genuine gratitude for a woman who'd chosen compassion over self-preservation during the worst crisis his organization had faced in years. New customers began arriving with steady regularity, some connected to Dominic's legitimate business interests, Others simply drawn by genuine word of mouth about the diner's exceptional pie and the specific warm hospitality that had somehow survived everything that happened within its walls. Dominic's continued presence in Kaylee and Ruby's life evolved slowly, deliberately, from crisis-driven necessity into something considerably more genuine. His own reckoning with the specific kind of person capable of remaining kind and generous, even while running a business that never once turned reliable profit, producing genuine admiration that grew into something neither of them had specifically planned. Months later, Kaylee stood behind the Blue Cardinal Diner's counter on an ordinary evening, the parking lot full for the first time in years, the specific warm hum of a genuinely successful business filling the space that had once been failing quietly on a forgotten highway. Ruby sat in her favorite booth doing homework, occasionally looking up to wave at Dominic, who sat at the counter drinking coffee with none of the danger or urgency that had defined their first devastating night together. Just present, just choosing exactly where he wanted to be. You know, you never actually told me if I get to keep being one of your superheroes. Ruby's voice carried genuine, hopeful curiosity as she looked up from her homework. Dominic's answering smile carried genuine, unguarded warmth. I think that position's permanent, if you'll have me. Kaylee watched the exchange from behind the counter, genuine peace settling over her in a way she hadn't experienced since her father's death 3 years earlier. The specific, quiet miracle of a diner that had been failing for 2 years finally, genuinely thriving, alongside a family she'd never expected to find in the aftermath of the most dangerous night of her life. If this story kept you holding your breath from that stormy night to this final ordinary evening, if it reminded you that real strength isn't about being fearless, but about choosing compassion even when fear would be easier, subscribe right now, because we are not finished. Share this with someone who needs it today. Like this video, drop your city below, and turn on notifications because the next story is already loaded and you are not ready for what's coming.